Welcome back to Bash Bros and our TEW2020 Let's Play, where we find out what would happen if Conor McGregor opened his own wrestling promotion. This is Notorious Pro Wrestling episode 9, and we've just had our second pay-per-view, Obsession. So some of the fallout then from Obsession: we wrapped up the Cyborg Wolves and the Kings of the North feud for now, just to give time so that Bonesaw's shoulder injury can heal. The Ace Austin, Kenny Williams and Stevie Boy feud has wrapped up as well, which will allow Ace to kind of go on to a new one to continue his winning momentum. And then we've also had the P12 ongoing. Here are the current standings. We've had Davey Boy on 10 points, Doug on 9, Easton, Reese on 7, Judy on 3, Nathan Cruz bottom of the pack with not a win to his name. And then Zach Gibson on 6 points for Block A, and Block B is as such Chris Hero on 12, Curtis Axel on 6, Grado, the bitch of his group, on nothing, James Drake 3, James Storm 6, and Rob Lynch also 6. Outside of the ring, things that have been happening, I think probably the big thing to discuss is I'm thinking of a change of format after the next pay-per-view. So by the time the next pay-per-view rolls around, we should have a NPW World Champion, with the P12 finally wrapping up. After that, because there's no constant every single week like the P12, Nick and I were discussing kind of what ways to do this, because if I release one episode a week, literally it is a parallel on time, from real life time to game time. So 1 year in game will be 1 year in real life. And I don't think enough happens in the game in that amount of time for it to be interesting. Even a couple of times so far, you probably realise that I don't have news to tell you. So I think after the next pay-per-view, and when we have the Notorious Pro Wrestling World Champion, what I'm going to do is I will only really come back, one, for the next pay-per-view, so you'll guarantee I'll be back for the next pay-per-view, and possibly anything that interesting that happens in between then. So if nothing happens between the previous pay-per-view and the next one, I just kind of go through the motions, booking some storylines and stuff like that. You know, there's not even any big blow-offs. There'll be no episodes in between the pay-per-views. I'll do a quick recap, which will make slightly longer episodes. So I'll do a quick recap during the news section to kind of let people see how things have progressed, if there has been any turns or anything like that. And then the other side of that is, if something does happen, we'll come back then. So it could be a really interesting month, and I'll be back every single week during that. Or it could be that maybe only on week 2 something happened that I want to talk about, or I have a big angle planned that I want to talk about and show. Then we'll be back for that. The reason it came into my head as well was because one of the Football Manager YouTubers that I watch, Work the Space, does a similar thing for his. He's not there for every game. He only comes back for the interesting games of the season, which I think is a really good way to do that, especially in terms of booking a small company in TEW. Because you're so small, you can't compete with the big names. So for anything interesting to happen, you really need to get to like a medium or small size of company before you're fighting with the big boys. Another reason for the format change is when we get to kind of a medium size, I want to introduce a second show. And if I'm coming back twice a week for each show, that's going to lead to it taking even longer for anything to really happen. Plus, if I'm only releasing one episode a week, it literally will take 2 weeks for us to get through 1 week of in-game time whenever we get to 2 shows. So that's my thinking about it. I think it's a good idea. I think that it means that you guys are going to see the best bits, the most interesting bits that happen, which will then lead to way more interesting content for yourselves. Instead of coming back for some weeks, I'm literally just booking the show and not much else is happening otherwise. If we get into another tournament, we'll maybe start to upload more episodes. I am currently in the process of shortlisting some women candidates, which will be the next belt or championship we introduce, will be the women's championship. That is the plan at the minute. It could change. Maybe we will just keep going with being back for every single week. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to be back for the pay-per-views, which is when the big blow-offs and storylines will end and storylines will continue, or new storylines will start. So you're not going to miss anything massive in that sense. But that's enough of me rambling. Let's get into booking the show. So coming at you from the Ringside Club in Ireland, our home away from home, we are back for Notorious Pro Wrestling Wanted. There was no real issues booking this show, to be honest. I think Nathan Cruz and Zach Gibson is going to be the throwaway match. I'm just having Zach Gibson dominate Nathan Cruz because, I mean, he's already not for naught. So yeah, other than that, there was really no issues. So we'll just launch into it. So on the pre-show, we had Filthy Generation going over the NIC in a 40 rated segment. Aspen Faith got a 43, Lewis Gervin got a 38, Charlie Carter 43, and Oisin Delaney a 40. So it's actually a really good performance from NIC. They kind of outperformed Filthy Generation. So overall, I'm very happy with that. Again, we knew it was going to be short, but it is on the pre-show. And then in another 40 rated segment, Filthy Generation say that they run Notorious Pro Wrestling's tag division, all 5 teams of it, and that no one can stop them. So this storyline will lead to Filthy Generation versus the Cyborg Wolves. So next week, Cyborg Wolves will call Filthy Generation out on their bullshit to lead to their match. On to the main show then. Easton Reese versus Judy Fleisch in a match that only scored 36. That is disappointing because this was a 20-minute match. Easton Reese got a 44 and Judy Fleisch got a 47, so neither of them really had the psychology then to kind of carry this long a match, which negatively impacted, which is disappointing because otherwise they would have probably gotten about a 45. So during the previous match, Ace Austin came out and was flaunting and doing flamboyant things as Ace Austin does, which distracted Judy, leading to Judy taking the fall. Judy then gets in Ace's face after the match and slaps some respect into Ace Austin. It was a 41 segment, which is actually very solid. I'll take that. Next match then, Zach Gibson beats Nathan Cruz in a 32. This was a domination match and it was a short match, so 32 is okay. I wasn't expecting anything great. Nathan Cruz had a 33, which is okay, and Zach Gibson with a 46, which is good. James Storm then with a promo says he's going to whoop James Drake's ass tonight and then whoop Rob Lynch's ass next week. 45, which is not bad from James Storm. He is one of our better talkers. Maybe we'd like a bit more, but I'll take 45. The match itself then, James Drake versus James Storm, with Storm going over. 50 segment, which is very good. James Drake had a 50 and James Storm had a 53. Very happy with that. And then, after the match, Rob Lynch, pissed that he thinks James Storm is going to kick his ass, smashes a beer bottle over Storm's head while he's celebrating. And that got a 46, which is quite solid as well. And that's the show. 47 overall, which is probably what we deserve. Our main event was 50, and then I don't think we really had a killer promo, which probably knocked it down a wee bit, so I'd say 47 is good, and we increased our popularity across all 14 regions. Looking at the news then, doesn't look like there's anything too interesting, so other than us, we really outshone some of the bigger companies with our recent efforts. We've been getting on a lot, which is good. So before we go then, I will take a look at the P12 standings. So Davey Boy has nothing left to wrestle. In fact, there's only one match left in Block A, which is Doug Williams versus Zach Gibson, which we will do next week. And then in Block B, we have Chris Hero. So there's 3 matches left to wrestle in Block B. Hero, Axel, Drake Grado, and Rob Lynch versus James Storm. Yeah, so we'll finish off Block A next week, and then we'll have a defined winner then. We will do, I want to see if I don't want to define the 2 block winners in the same week, or do I? Yeah, so next week I actually think we'll tie up the P12. I think that we will further the other 2 storylines going, which is Filthy Gen versus Cyborg Wolves and Ace Austin versus, at the minute, Judy Fleisch, but that will actually develop into Ace Austin versus Sonico. Sonico is going to be like this vigilante-esque character. We'll further these 2, Ace Austin and Sonico versus Cyborg Wolves and Filthy Generation, via angles, and then the only matches we will have next week will be all the P12. So that's what we'll do next week. Thank you very much for joining me for this week's Notorious Pro Wrestling playthrough. And don't forget, after the coming pay-per-view, we'll be going to a slightly different format where there might be bigger gaps in-game between the episodes. But thank you again, and I'll see you next time on Bash Bros.